Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into our time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
All right, we're going to do something special on this 10th day of August. We're going to go back and listen to the coverage of NBC on what some people are calling the false VJ Day, because VJ Day was still to come. The terms of surrender have not been accepted from Japan. Japan offered some terms, and we're going to hear a lot of the news over 2 or 3 different blocks here that we're going to do, because I want you to have in your hands what we have, which is the information as it was broadcast on this date 80 years ago. These are the sounds of impending surrender. Again, understand, Japan has not yet surrendered at the time these broadcasts were being made. Now, Japan, at the time of these first broadcasts, had accepted many of the terms of the Potsdam Conference, the terms of the Allies of surrender. But as you'll hear, there were a couple of things that they hadn't talked about. And, we've already bombed Hiroshima. We bombed Nagasaki. And the president was not comfortable with wiping out another 100,000 people. And particularly the president said he didn't want to think about killing all those kids. Now, all this is not being reported at the time. We know this afterwards. General Leslie Groves said another atomic bomb could be ready for deployment within a week. General George C. Marshall, Chief of Staff, said Truman said no. Unless the president decided to. Japan said, look, we need to consider this. Japan wanted the condition that the Emperor Hirohito should stay in power. And this is all what's going on. So we will, and what I want to do is just, I'm going to shut up. I'm not going to give a lot of commentary during this hour, or this 2-hour block, or any of these. But I want you to start. We're going to start off at 11 o'clock Eastern Time. This is a full air check that we got a copy of WEAF in New York City, which would later become WNBC, 660 on the dial. And this is from 11 o'clock Eastern Wartime, and there were lots of news. So let's listen, shall we?
WEAF, New York. Again, the National Broadcasting Company interrupts all its programs to bring you a special broadcast. At this time, on this important news of the day, we present the distinguished NBC commentators H.B. Kaltenborn and Cesar Saerchinger. First, Mr. Kaltenborn.
Good morning, everybody. We are here in the NBC newsroom with the bulletins coming in constantly on Japan's surrender offer. And with every minute that passes, it seems more certain that the offer is definite and that there is a 9 out of 10 chance that it will be accepted. At this moment, the British cabinet is meeting. The United States leaders of our war effort are meeting in Washington. And we now know definitely that last night, the Japanese foreign minister gave to the Russian ambassador in Tokyo a definite statement that Japan desired to surrender. The one thing that Japan desired to make clear is that they reserved the position of the emperor. Now, the position of the emperor was not mentioned in the Potsdam Declaration because we were perfectly willing to accept a continuance of the emperor's rule. If we had not been willing to do that, we would have mentioned him specifically, since we know that he is an outstanding factor. As a matter of fact, the information that came to me some days ago is that when Russia first transmitted Japan's peace offer, there were two conditions. One, that the position of the emperor should not be touched. Two, that there should be no occupation of Japan. Japan was then advised that while we might consider retaining the emperor, we could not consider under any circumstances the failure to occupy her territory. And as you know, the Potsdam Declaration specifically says that we have the choice to occupy such points in Japan as we please, and there is no limit as to the time during which they are to be occupied. Now, obviously, anyone who reads the Potsdam Declaration, the Potsdam Ultimatum, must realize that we will be in complete control of the situation once we are in Japan, and that we can very easily manipulate matters so that the emperor will assume that particular position in the new setup which we desire him to assume. And we could also, obviously, in educating the Japanese people to democratic government, as we say we will do, we could educate them up to the point where they would reject the emperor. In other words, there is no importance to be attached to what we do with the emperor at this particular moment. And my own feeling is, on the basis of what I know about his position and of what I learned in Japan, is that, as Senator Thomas has said this morning, he can be tremendously useful to us. For example, there are troops scattered all over the Pacific, Japanese troops, which would be capable of carrying on the war perhaps for 6 months, perhaps for a year. Now, the one voice that could definitely recall those troops, that could persuade all of them, and probably all of the commanders, to accept the peace, is the voice of the emperor. And surely we would be more than foolish if we did not use his position, his power, and his prestige to accomplish the purposes of the Potsdam Ultimatum. And that ultimatum is accepted completely, with the single exception of the position of the emperor. Now, Britain right along has been perfectly willing to retain the emperor. A large section of our State Department has been perfectly willing to keep him. And knowing the Russians as realists, we can be sure that they will be perfectly willing to go along, knowing as they do that his whole position, his entire power, is dependent upon us once we are in the islands of Japan. Now, only time can tell as to whether or not the emperor is worth something to the democratic cause, or whether he represents too much the ancient tradition and must be removed. And we can depend upon securing the cooperation of the Japanese people for accomplishing the purpose which we believe will be soundest in carrying out the Potsdam Ultimatum. We can get their cooperation once we are there and in complete control. For all these reasons, my own conviction is that what we have here is an offer of surrender that will be accepted by the Allies. Now, there may be some further negotiation. There may be a desire, both on the part of Japan and on the part of the Allies, to get one or two things more definitely in line with regard to the emperor's position. Also, remember that official communications are now coming, presumably through Sweden, because Moscow tells us this morning that the foreign minister's offer of surrender is being transmitted to Allied capitals through Sweden. So undoubtedly, these communications are coming in. They are developing very rapidly, and everything that we have had so far indicates that this is it. Japanese surrender is undoubtedly a matter of ours. And here's NBC's Cesar Saerchinger with more comment.
Good morning. Well, this is one of the exciting mornings in NBC, as you can imagine. We are waiting momentarily for the final news that Japan has surrendered. In other words, accepted our terms of surrender as published in the ultimatum of June 26th at Potsdam. Now, what does that mean? Among other things, that means that the terms of the Cairo Declaration shall be carried out, and Japanese sovereignty shall be limited to the islands of Honshu, Hokkaido, Kyushu, Shikoku, and such minor islands as we determine. In other words, Japan will lose Formosa. She will lose Sakhalin. She will lose all of the Pacific islands which we have occupied or about to occupy, and she will lose Manchuria and everything she has occupied in China. And that is a very interesting point because at the very last hour, you might say at the 11th hour and 55th minute and 59th second, Russia entered the war. Russia declared war on Japan according to agreement, as President Truman said, but the time had not been set. But when that first bomb dropped on Hiroshima on Sunday night, something happened in Moscow. Within 72 hours, Russia was at war with Japan. The historical inference in the future will be, of course, that the atomic bomb precipitated Russia into the war at the last minute. Now, it's important to note that Russia immediately associated herself with the declaration of July 26. In other words, the surrender terms of the Allies to Japan, rather. It means that Japan must surrender to Russia as well as to ourselves. It is also important to notice that T.V. Soong and the Chinese foreign minister returned to Moscow and are now negotiating at the Kremlin. What is the significance of that? The Cairo Declaration, which was made by FDR and Churchill and Chiang Kai-shek, said that Japan will be stripped of all those territories that I mentioned. In fact, all the territories she acquired over the last 50 years. Now, can Russia just submit to that? I mean, can she just simply have Manchuria returned to China, as is agreed there, and Korea given her independence? Look at the record of Russia in Manchuria and in Korea. It goes back, so far as Manchuria is concerned, to the 17th century. Manchuria is a rich country, the size of Texas and Colorado combined, and perhaps as rich and richer than those states. Now, Russia's record there is that back in 1861, she took a part of Manchuria, namely the part along the Sea of Japan, the Yellow Sea rather, now known as the Soviet Maritime Province, whose main port is Vladivostok. She spent many years and many millions of rubles building her Trans-Siberian Railroad out to Manchuria and to Vladivostok. She intervened in Japan's war against China in 1895 and secured the Liaotung Peninsula, that appendage in the south of Manchuria, including the warm water ports of Port Arthur and Dairen. And after she got the southern ports, she proceeded to develop the rest of Manchuria, which was still nominally Chinese. She built railroads connecting the ports with a Trans-Siberian line and lines into China. Millions of Chinese settlers poured in, and Russia had reason and has reason to consider herself the great pioneer and builder-upper of Manchuria. Besides, she was also exploiting Korea in an uneasy partnership with Japan. And all that was swept away in her war with Japan in 1904-5, which was one of the most humiliating wars a great power has suffered. A great power has suffered in recent times. Now, Russia is obviously returning to the Pacific, not merely out of friendship for us, because great powers don't go to war for such reasons, but to get even. In other words, to go back and claim her great interests in the Pacific and to have a settlement with Japan on her own account. Now, see what happens there. In 1918, when the Soviet Russia was still in the throes of revolution, the Japanese came back and invaded not only Manchuria, but Siberia. And ever since then, ever since the Russians have been driven out of Manchuria virtually by the Japanese, that is in 1931, those two nations have been facing each other across that border, that long 2,000-mile border of Manchuria and along the borders of Mongolia, with their great armies. The Kwantung Army of the Japanese on one side and the great Red Banner Army of the Russians on the other side. And those borders have been fortified. There have been hundreds and hundreds of border clashes during that time up to the recent accord between Japan and Russia, and there have been two full-scale wars involving hundreds of thousands of men and tens of thousands of casualties. Now, all of that has gone by Russia, as Russia has put into Manchuria, and she has put a great deal of investment into Korea, and she's put a great deal of effort in other parts of the northern China. Is she just was simply going to give that up now and return everything to China without any strings attached. Well, it isn't in the way of powers, whatever they are, imperialistic or communistic, to just do that. So I feel that the surrender of Japan, while it will technically end the war, is not likely to stop the Soviet armies now on the march in Manchuria. They will go on and occupy all the country, which will become the subject of negotiations at the peace table. Manchuria is not the only score, of course, they have to settle. The whole question of China gets a new slant by our entry into the war. There is the question of Outer and Inner Mongolia. There's the question of the warm water ports, Port Arthur and so on. There's the question of Xinjiang, or Chinese Turkestan, which was occupied by Russia and was then released and practically given back to China. But China is separated from it by the Gobi Desert, and it is not likely that Russia will give that huge country up, the size of France by itself. Then there's that great question of the Chinese communists. The Russian interest in them goes back to 1922. It's true, they have dealt with Chiang Kai-shek since then. But since 1927, Chiang has tried to exterminate those communists, or northern Chinese, as they like to be called. Russia sent supplies to the Chongqing government, but it stopped on the pretext of the war with Germany, and in reality because Russia couldn't control the armaments after they got to Chongqing government, and couldn't control them whether they weren't being used against the communists. Now today those communists occupy the huge border region near Siberia. 50 or more million people are there. Can Russia abandon them in a deal with Chiang? More likely she will demand a friendly government there, as she has demanded friendly governments on her borders in Europe. In other words, the war with Japan may be over, but the great questions to be settled in Asia loom up more and greater than ever before.
During the past quarter hour, the National Broadcasting Company has presented H.V. Kaltenborn and Cesar Saerchinger. Keep tuned to your NBC station for the later news.
That takes us up to 11:15. We will have some more news from NBC in just a moment. Okay, now we're going to go back to more coverage of NBC and the breaking news. It had not been made formal yet, but let's hear what's said. And by the way, the announcer makes a mistake. It's 11:15, but he says 11:45. You know, when you're doing this sort of thing, you get nervous sometimes and say the wrong thing. But let's go back to WEAF New York, 11:15 on August 10th, 1945.
.45 a.m. Eastern Wartime. Your station, WEAF, NBC in New York. Again, the National Broadcasting Company interrupts all of its programs to bring you another special broadcast on the important news of the day. During the next quarter hour, we present three NBC News commentators, Don Goddard, James Stevenson, and Henry Cassidy. First, Mr. Goddard.
The events of the last few crowded hours have moved with lightning swiftness since we heard the Jap radio say that Japan would quit if she could keep her emperor. These reports are still unconfirmed, but they have set a whole world in motion. To this moment, we don't know whether they are true or not. So far, this is not VJ Day. Officially, not VJ Day. That cannot be too strongly emphasized. Here's what's happened. At 7:38 this morning, NBC monitors in San Francisco heard a radio beam reportedly to come from Japan, which carried a statement couched in flowery terms. And that statement said essentially that Japan was willing to accept the ultimatum laid down by the Big Three at Potsdam on June 26th of this year, if such action would not prejudice the sovereignty of her sun god emperor, Hirohito. She knew that the warlords must go under the Potsdam Agreement. But nowhere in that statement was the emperor mentioned, and she takes advantage of that. A few minutes later, another radio beam reporting to come from Japan quoted a Domei news agency dispatch to the effect that such an offer of surrender had been made by the government of Japan. I broadcast that news seconds after it was received and repeated it later when a few more details had come in. NBC was very careful to emphasize at that time that this was not official. The Japanese transmission was broken twice, and that gave rise to speculation. And it was not until 9:33 our time this morning that the concluding sentence was finally put over the Japanese air. That concluding sentence was this: the Japanese government hopes sincerely that this understanding is warranted and desires keenly that an explicit indication to that effect will be speedily forthcoming. She was referring to the Potsdam ultimatum, which omitted the name of the emperor. The other report came from the Moscow radio, which said that the Japanese Foreign Minister Togo had informed the Soviet ambassador in Tokyo that Japan is ready to accept the Potsdam terms. And a few moments later, President Truman, who got his news from exactly the same sources we did, and not through diplomatic channels or officially, had summoned his advisors, both diplomatic and military. Secretary Burns ran to the State Department and was followed closely in a matter of minutes by Secretaries Forrestal and Stimson. They were closeted for about a half an hour. During that time, they apparently conferred with London and Moscow by telephone. From those governments later came other news that the British cabinet had been called to meet with Prime Minister At.the at 10 Downing Street, and as far as we know, is now in session. But Moscow said there had not been any news from the Kremlin up to this moment. As late as 10:36, just a few minutes ago, President Truman at the White House announced that he had not received any official word of a Japanese surrender offer, although the Japanese reports this morning claimed that they had sent such an offer through the Swedish and Swiss governments. In short, to this moment, this is not VJ Day. All we know is what is reported to have come from the Japanese radio. There's been no communication among the responsible heads of the governments concerned. How soon we may know the truth is hard to say. President Truman is keeping to a rather busy schedule in spite of the tense situation, which would indicate that it might be some time before any Allied consideration would be given to a Japanese surrender offer, if and when it is advanced officially through diplomatic channels. President Truman said this morning that the United States would do nothing about such an offer, if there were one, without talking to the other governments concerned, without conferring with them. Such a communication could not be handled at once, of course, and then there's a matter of decision. Do the Allies see eye to eye on this matter of the emperor who is supposed to be descended from the sun god? In London and Washington, there's some comment today that it might be possible to accept at least that part of the Japanese offer. Meanwhile, American soldiers all over the world are going wild on the flood of rumors that's sweeping the globe. But they're not laying down their arms. The shooting war is still on as of this moment. Here's a bulletin just relayed to us from the NBC newsroom in Washington. White House Press Secretary Charles Ross, in his regular news conference, which has just ended, says again that President Truman has had no official word of any Japanese surrender. Mr. Ross said that the president, like everyone else, is awaiting developments for a further report. Now, we take you to NBC in Washington.
This is NBC in New York calling NBC in Washington. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the NBC newsroom in New York, and now we're unable to contact NBC in Washington, so we'll carry on our 15-minute broadcast from the NBC newsroom in New York. We bring you now James Stevenson.
Radio Tokyo has announced that Japan is willing to accept the surrender ultimatum issued at Potsdam July 26th, with a provision that Emperor Hirohito's prerogatives as a sovereign ruler are not prejudiced. The Potsdam ultimatum, which was issued jointly by President Truman, Prime Minister Churchill, and journalist Mo Chiang Kai-shek, representing the three major powers then at war with Japan, re-emphasized the Cairo Declaration made by President Roosevelt and Churchill, which demanded that Japan give up all of its empire except the home islands, and further that Japan's ability to make war be completely destroyed, and the home islands themselves be strictly supervised by the Allied powers. However, the Potsdam ultimatum left open the question of Hirohito's retention as the Emperor of Japan. This decision was obviously made because of the claim of some Allied experts on Japanese affairs that Hirohito as Emperor was a symbol to the Japanese people, a deeply religious symbol, and they would never surrender unless Hirohito were retained. In other words, the Allied powers believed that if it were true, it would be better to let Hirohito remain emperor of a defeated and impotent Japan rather than take the drastic military measures necessary to bring the Japanese people to surrender at a greater cost of Allied lives while also prolonging the war. They probably believed also that they could use Hirohito for their own benefit. Now, The question which arises today as a result of Japan's surrender offer is whether the condition Tokyo demands, that is, that Hirohito's prerogatives as a sovereign emperor not be prejudiced, can be reconciled with the Potsdam Ultimatum. If it can, then the war is as good as over, and all that remains is for the heads of the governments to get together, agree on an armistice to stop further bloodshed, and then open discussions for peace terms. On the other hand, if the condition evades the terms of the Potsdam Ultimatum, then the war must continue until Japan is completely defeated on the field of battle. Thus, the problem resolves itself into an interpretation of the word sovereign. Now, ordinarily, sovereign means supreme power and authority, without restriction of any kind. If this is what Tokyo means when it insists that Hirohito retain his prerogatives as a sovereign ruler, then the condition is entirely incompatible with the Potsdam Ultimatum. It is quite certain that the Allies will not accept this condition, for it would not be the complete surrender at losing all her stolen empire. She would still remain a dangerous threat to peace in the years ahead. With her industrial facilities left to her, there is no reason why she could not develop an atomic bomb in the future, and if that were to happen, it takes little imagination to realize what would happen to the world. If Japan's defeat is to be final and decisive, her surrender must be as complete as Germany's. She must not only lose her stolen lands, she must not only make reparations to the peoples she has overrun, she must not only make amends for her war crimes, but she must also be deprived of her ability ever again to make war. The only way that can be done is by Allied occupation and supervision of the Japanese home islands for as long a period as is necessary to reduce Japan to an agricultural state and to ensure that whatever manufacturing facilities are left her will not be used nor can be used to make implements of war. The Japanese people themselves must learn that they have been defeated and that they cannot take their place in the family of nations until they have learned the bitter lesson of defeat and have acquired a desire for peace. But the Allies cannot assure the world that the Japanese people have learned these lessons unless they occupy Japan. And that cannot be done so long as Hirohito is allowed to retain his prerogatives as a sovereign emperor. Now, it's entirely possible that the Japanese, in their customary pattern of face-saving, may place a different interpretation on the word sovereign. They may decide for themselves that Hirohito can retain his sovereignty while the Allies occupy Japan. It is perfectly possible that they may say to themselves, our emperor remains on the throne, and therefore it makes little difference that Allied soldiers march down our streets and make rules and regulations governing our activity. The emperor remains head of our religious faith, and therefore he is still the supreme and sovereign ruler. This, of course, is all conjecture, although perfectly plausible. If this were to occur, then today's Tokyo offer would meet the terms of the Potsdam Ultimatum, and the war would be over, for actually it would be unconditional surrender in accordance with the Allied demands. The important thing is that Japan has taken a definite step toward ending the war. The way is now open for further discussions and considerations, and thus the way is open for a meeting of minds and an end to bloodshed. Reports from London indicate that the British government is looking with favor on the Japanese surrender proposal. There has been no comment from the White House except that President Truman, Secretary of State Burns, and other high government officials are conferring. Whatever happens, the immediate fate of the world rests on the one word sovereign. Within its definition and interpretation await life or death for thousands of people. And now for further comment on today's sensational development, here is Henry Cassidy.
Russia, which only yesterday went to war with Japan, is today deeply, thoroughly involved with the Allies in the negotiations that may lead at last to world peace. It was only 2 days ago that we heard from Moscow the Soviet declaration of war on Japan, a declaration that gave as its purpose to bring peace nearer, free the people from further sacrifice and suffering, and give the Japanese people the possibility of avoiding the fate that befell Germany. It was only yesterday that the Far Eastern Red Armies started their march on Manchuria. And today it was the Soviet ambassador to Japan, Jacob Malik, still in Tokyo, who received the direct bid for peace from the Japs. We have from Moscow radio this announcement. It has just been learned from Tokyo that today, August 10th, a meeting took place between the Japanese Minister of Foreign Affairs and Soviet Ambassador Malik at the latter's residence. Mr. Togo made the following statement to the Soviet ambassador. The Japanese government is prepared to accept the conditions of the declaration of July 26th this year, that is the Potsdam Ultimatum, and it approached the Soviet government. The Japanese government points out that in the declaration there are no terms concerning the position of the emperor as sovereign ruler of Japan. The Japanese government requests specific information concerning that point. Mr. Togo also stated that an analogous statement had been made to the governments of the United States, Great Britain and China through Sweden. Now, that Moscow announcement brings up two interesting points. One is, what will be the Russian attitude toward keeping the emperor? The Russian attitude toward religion is well known. Officially, at least as far as the Communist Party is concerned, the Russians are atheists. They insist that they have freedom of religion in their country. They also insist that they have freedom of anti-religious propaganda. But though they may be atheists, the Russians are also realists. And if the Japanese want to keep their emperor, Hirohito, a religious symbol of leadership, it may well be that the Russians will say, let them keep him. And then, what will be the Russian participation in the peace? There are a number of things the Russians will certainly want. They'll want all of the island of Sakhalin, just off the coast of Siberia, which is now held in the north by the Russians and in the south by the Japanese. The Russians will want to throw the Japanese out of fishing in Soviet Far Eastern waters. The Russians will want some control of the Chinese Eastern Railway, that is, the railway that was built by the old Tsarist Russia and has now been taken over by the Japanese. The Russians will also want some part in Port Arthur, that great ice-free port that will give them an open access to the Pacific. The Russians certainly will have been well paid for their brief part in the Pacific War. But then, perhaps the Russians should be well paid because their entry precipitated the move for peace. And now to repeat the bulletin just relayed to us from the NBC newsroom in Washington, White House Press Secretary Charles Ross, in his regular news conference, which has just ended, says that President Truman has had no official word of any Japanese surrender. Mr. Ross said the president, like everyone else, is awaiting developments. No other information is at hand except that received in monitoring of the Tokyo radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, during the past quarter hour, we have presented Don Goddard, James Stevenson, and Henry Cassidy, NBC News staff commentators. Keep tuned to your NBC station for the later news.
The end of the war is in sight. That's the most important thing. But the good news is an end of the war is coming soon. We're going to hear a soap opera coming up next at 11:30 Eastern War Time on Friday, August 10th, 1945, the story of Barry Cameron. That's next. The end of the war is in sight. You're listening to programming from Friday, August 10th, 1945, and we hear a soap opera from NBC following a brief bulletin.
The National Broadcasting Company interrupts this program to bring you a special news summary. There is still no official word in Washington on the report of Japan's surrender offer. Radio Moscow says the Russian ambassador in Tokyo is discussing the question of what will happen to Emperor Hirohito in case of surrender. London reports the British cabinet in session, but nothing official there. All allied governments are standing by awaiting developments. Keep tuned to your NBC station for later news.
We now present once again Barry Cameron, the story of a soldier who came home and of his wife Anna. For an extra feature of daintiness that you can see for yourself, change to famous Sweetheart soap. For Sweetheart is the only soap among the 8 leading beauty soaps that comes in a quick-drying oval cake. Hence, Sweetheart is always more pleasant to look at, more pleasant to pick up, and so much daintier for the next person to use. You see, unlike many soaps that lie flat, only one tiny part of Sweetheart's oval cake touches the soap dish. That means air gets under it to dry it fast. Helps avoid wasteful, melted soap. For gentle, thorough beauty care and fragrant shampoos, get Sweetheart in the oval cake. Remember, Sweetheart is the soap that agrees with your skin. Barry Cameron, the story of a soldier who came home and of his wife Anna as they begin their life together again. The injury of Warren Johnson has brought Barry to Mercy Hospital, as it has brought Warren's father, Thad Johnson. Mr. Johnson, haggard and near the point of exhaustion, is staring out a window in the waiting room. A woman enters and looks about uncertainly. Then, slowly, she goes to a chair. For silent moments, Mr. Johnson watches her, knowing she, too, is afraid for someone. And he feels a kinship so strong that it pulls him across the room to her side.
May I talk to you?
Oh, I didn't hear you walk across the room.
I just wanted to say that I'm sorry. I wish you hadn't had to come to this hospital because it means that someone you know or love is ill.
Yes, it does.
I'm sorry.
You're waiting for word of someone, aren't you?
Yes, my son. They don't expect him to live.
Oh.
I've been in this room for so long, helpless. I'd like to go down there and exchange my life for his, and I can't. There's nothing I can do. You know, very often people have thought that the end of the world had come. Well, the end of my world is coming now. If I could just start over again. If I could find the big calendar and tear off the pages. Back to the time when my children were born. So many mistakes. So many wrong turnings. This was set up then. The pattern for my son's accident was set up then. My mistakes are responsible.
You have more than your son?
What?
You said children. Nothing can make up for his loss. But at least you won't be alone. You'll have someone else. That's poor comfort now, but maybe in time it'll help you. I hope it will. With all my heart, I hope so.
You're very kind.
I mean it.
I know you do. I have a daughter.
So have I.
Is she why you're here? If you'd rather not.
It's all right. Really it is. Yes, she's why I'm here.
What's the matter with her?
She came to see the young man she loves. He was hurt and I believe he's dying. I thought that I ought to be with Frances, or near her anyway, in case she needs me.
Frances?
Yes.
What's your name?
Mrs. Adams. Bertha Adams.
And you're Frances Adams' mother?
Yes, Do you know her?
Yes, I know her. I'm Thad Johnson.
Thad Johnson?
Yes. Your daughter's here to see my son. Frances is here to see Warren because he asked for her.
One of the girls in Frances' office telephoned me about it. Joan Clark. Joan came to the hospital with her. All she said was that Warren had been run over by a car and they'd sent for Frances. What happened, Mr. Johnson?
Warren left home when Frances broke her engagement to him. Left home because it was my fault that she wouldn't have him.
It was your daughter Edna's fault.
He and Frances were to have been married today, but things got so bad that she had to give him up. Well, Warren asked another girl to marry him, somebody he had met at a party just 2 or 3 nights ago. Oh, Mrs. Adams, she's horrible. A frowsy little blonde who took one look at his bank balance and leaped at the chance of getting him. They were on the way to the chapel this noon. My son went to hail a taxi, and he stepped in front of it.
You're blaming yourself, Mr. Johnson. You mustn't.
I told you the pattern for Warren's accident was set up when my children were young, and it was.
But Edna is the one who broke them up. She objected to Frances. She made things so miserable for her that Frances couldn't marry Warren.
That's what I mean, Mrs. Adams. I should have had more control over her. I should have been able to stop Edna. Instead, she forced me to take her side. She ran away from home. She threatened suicide.
Good heavens.
Yes, it got that far. I had to take Edna's side because I was afraid of what she might do. I had to tell Warren that if he married your daughter, he and I were through. Edna wanted it that way, and that's the way it had to be.
Mr. Johnson.
What? Oh, it's the nurse. What is it?
The doctor started the transfusion.
Started it? What's the matter? Barry Cameron went to give Warren a transfusion an hour ago.
Yes, and that's been done. We had to send to General Hospital for some type O blood.
You mean they're giving Warren another transfusion?
Yes. Mr. Cameron was able to help out because he's type O. But he can't give any more. Fortunately, General could spare some. Then Warren hasn't seen my daughter yet. Frances Adams? Not yet, Mrs. Adams. He hasn't regained consciousness.
Nurse, will he? Does he have a chance at all?
Dr. Hartley will speak to you as soon as he's free.
I can't wait for Dr. Hartley. I want to know now.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson.
You're sorry.
The doctors are doing everything they can. But there's very little chance for your son.
Can't we get more doctors? Anybody. I'll pay for anything.
Miracles can't be bought, can they? And a miracle's all that will save him.
I see.
Nurse, where is Frances? Can't she do something?
She's waiting with Mr. Cameron. They're close by Warren's room, so that if he should ask for her, she'll be right there.
Why isn't there some word, Barry? Why don't they tell us something?
They will when they can, Francis.
Our wedding day. This was to be our wedding day. How did he look, Barry? You saw him.
Well, he didn't look so good.
And he didn't revive at all after the transfusion? Or during it?
No.
Oh, if I could speak to him. If I could tell him he has to live.
He couldn't hear you.
No. Where's your wife, Barry? You haven't said.
Anna had to go to Chicago. Her father was taken to the hospital.
Barry.
Yes. It was very sudden. Ruptured appendix.
How is he?
I'm not sure. He was pretty sick the last I knew. Anna called me this morning, and I had a telegram around noon.
There may have been something else from her by now. It's almost 4 o'clock.
Well, Pat Kelly at the garage knows I'm here. He can get in touch with me if there's anything.
Oh, poor Barry. It's too bad people keep needing you. It isn't fair, is it? Warren and Edna and I have certainly complicated your life. Oh, listen. Did somebody call me?
Well, I don't think so, Francis.
Maybe it was a nurse. Miss North? No, there isn't anybody in the hall. My heart stopped beating for a minute. Now it's pounding.
Well, do you suppose you could drink a cup of tea or something, Francis?
Oh, no thanks, Barry.
You didn't have any lunch because I was with you trying to get you to go to the chapel. Trying to stop Warren from marrying Gloria Mulvaney.
Gloria Mulvaney.
You do understand about her, don't you, Francis? She isn't anything to him. It's as if he were on a very high diving board and yelling that he wasn't afraid. But he was afraid, Francis. He'd lost you and he was scared to death. Marrying Gloria was just his way of hanging onto somebody's hand and jumping off of that very high board.
Yes, Barry. I understand that.
Hey, wait a minute. Francis, what's the matter?
Matter? I don't know.
Francis, the doctor says... What's the matter, Mr. Cameron?
Nurse, I think she's going to faint.
Barry...
Don't let her fall.
I've got her. She didn't have any lunch. And then Warren...
Dr. Hartley wants her to come to Warren's room. I'll break the top of this vial. There it is. Francis, breathe deeply. Inhale this.
Is Warren asking for her?
He's talking about her. And the doctor thinks if she's there, she may be able to reach him.
Oh, she's really out. I'm having to hold her.
Can you put her on the bed, Mr. Cameron?
Yeah, sure. Sure, Miss North.
With her head up at this end.
Okay.
She's got to go to that boy's room now.
You mean if she doesn't, it may be too late?
Yes.
Oh, golly. Just a second. There she is. Can you bring her out of it?
I'll have to in a hurry. Oh, there's a call for you, Mr. Cameron, from Chicago. You can take it in the office that you used before.
But what about Frances? Oh, Chicago. That's my wife. News about her father. The same office, Miss North?
Yes, and on your way, ask the floor nurse to send a doctor in here, Mr. Cameron. Any doctor. And if you don't see the nurse, get one yourself.
Barry rushes out of the room in search of a doctor. Francis has to go to Warren's room now. Be sure to listen on Monday for the next chapter of the story of Barry Cameron and his wife Anna. Wherever women mention beauty care, wherever they talk about beauty soaps, you hear the good word today about Sweetheart Soap's extra feature of daintiness. You see this delicately perfumed soap in the attractive green box. Comes to you in a smooth oval cake that's quick drying. This quick-drying feature of Sweetheart soap means that Sweetheart is daintier to pick up, firmer, and more inviting to use. Unlike many soaps that lie flat, only one tiny part of Sweetheart's oval cake touches the soap dish. That means air gets under and practically all around it to dry it quickly. This helps avoid wasteful, melted soap. Your cake of Sweetheart is always more delightfully dainty to use. No wonder more than 6 million people have changed to Sweetheart soap in just 3 years alone. No wonder Sweetheart is a family favorite. Get acquainted with the only one of the 8 leading beauty soaps that offers you this self-evident advantage. Use Sweetheart soap for daily beauty care, baby's bath, tubs and showers, and fragrant shampoos. Today, be sure to get Sweetheart soap in the long-lasting oval cake that stays drier. Remember, Sweetheart is the soap that agrees with your skin. Barry finds a doctor in the hall.
Doctor, will you please go to room 212 right away? Frances Adams fainted, and she's got to see Warren Johnson. If she can't talk to him now, well, there isn't any hope for him.
And as the doctor heads quickly for room 212, Barry goes to the telephone to hear what Anna has to say about her father. Listen again on Monday at the same time for the story of Barry Cameron, the soldier who has come home, and of his wife Anna. Until Monday, then, this is Larry Elliott saying goodbye for Sweetheart Soap, the soap that agrees with your skin.
This is the National Broadcasting Company.
And that brings us up to 11:45 on Friday, August 10th, 1945. And up next, another soap opera, the story of David Harum. That's next. Now, for those of you who grabbed this is not our regular podcast. We are having a regular podcast today for Classic Radio Theater. And the podcast will consist of Suspense, Somebody Knows, The Mysterious Traveler, and Quiet Please. And we'll also have an episode of Lum and Abner. So look at that separately from what you're hearing here. This is history documentation. What people heard on WEAF in New York City on this date 80 years ago today, Friday, August 10th, 1945. We have now another soap opera that aired at 11:45, and this one is entitled David Harum. And let's listen to this. Of course, it's preceded by another news bulletin.
It's 11:45 a.m. Eastern Wartime. This is WEAF, NBC in New York.
The National Broadcasting Company interrupts this program to bring you a special bulletin. From the NBC newsroom in New York, government shortwave monitors in Washington report that no Japanese broadcast since 9:35 this morning Eastern Wartime has repeated the surrender offer made earlier. The Japs have also failed to inform their own people of the offer, although government officials are becoming less belligerent. Monitors report that the Tokyo transmitters are having trouble with frequent breaks in transmission. Keep tuned to your NBC station for later news.
Once again, we present David Harum, one of the most beloved stories of American fiction. For David Harum is America. It's the story of every one of us, of our search for love, for happiness, and the good way of life. Ladies, today you can come out of the kitchen quicker and save money, too, by cleaning with gentle grease-dissolving Babbo. I promise you this because Babbo is different from any ordinary lazy cleansers, different from the cleanser, for instance, you may be using right now. You see, 90% of scouring is caused by grease, and Babbo was specifically created to dissolve grease. With grease dissolved, the dirt and stains wipe gently off. You clean so quickly that actual surveys made by over 1,000 housewives show Babbo can save up to 1/2 hour each day. And because Babbo is so fast, you can use less of it, only half as much. This means you save real money. You owe it to yourself to try this faster, economical way that has already revolutionized the cleaning habits of over 3 million women. Today, ask your grocer for Babbo, spelled B-A-B-O. And now, David Harum. Darkness is tight around Jonathan Blake's house. The house where Jenny Gray now knows she has been a virtual prisoner since her accident. Tonight, as quickly as she could move, she got to the telephone and called Aunt Polly. Jenny's voice betrays her fear.
Aunt Polly, when I had my daughter call David and ask him to come out tonight to get us, I didn't know Jonathan Blake had men guarding the house. Oh, Aunt Polly, I'm afraid if David should get past the men outside, they'll never let him in. It's too late for you to stop David if he's left there. I'll have to do something to stop him. I'll turn on every light in the house here, and then I'll go to the front door. Well, maybe if I scream loud enough, David will hear me. Well, if it doesn't, he ought to attract the guards anyway. Aunt Polly, there's somebody in this room. I can't see a thing. It's dark, but so it is. Who is it? Answer me, who is it? Grace.
Put that phone down.
Grace,
Put that phone down. You got out of bed, Miss Grace. You weren't supposed to.
Well, I had to talk to somebody.
You called for help, didn't you? You called somebody you want to take you out of this house. This beautiful house that you should live in. I've done everything for you. Mr. Blake loves you and he'll marry you. And I've done everything I could to show you ought to live here. But you lied to me.
Oh, I didn't lie to you.
You cheated me out of the most wonderful thing in my life. You married to Mr. Blake, and the three of us living in this beautiful house. You'd have been like my own daughter. And you cheated me. I shouldn't have trusted you.
I shouldn't have trusted you, Grace. You know I love Ralph Prescott. I told you time after time that Mr. Blake was nothing to me, and that he never could be.
Fate sent you to us. Do you think I'll let you leave here?
You might as well, Grace. Aunt Polly told me that...
Aunt Polly, you telephoned to Mrs. Benson, didn't you?
Yes, I called Mrs. Benson. She told me that Ralph has tried to see me. He left our engagement ring here for me. I never knew of that either. You might as well let me leave, Grace. Ralph loves me, and that's all in the world that matters to me. Jonathan doesn't even exist for me.
You'll marry Mr. Blake.
I will not.
Yes, you will. You can't take this away from me.
My daughter's upstairs, Grace. Will you bring her down here, please?
Why?
Because we're going home.
How do you think you'll get there, Miss Gray? You can't walk, and nobody's going to drive you.
Somebody is going to drive me.
Not Mrs. Benson. Not Ralph Prescott or David Harum. Nobody can get to the house. You're as safe here as you would be in the highest tower in the loneliest spot on earth.
Safe?
Safe with Mr. Blake and me. We'll take care of you. We'll be happy. Don't you worry, Miss Gray. I told you there were men outside.
Oh, my head.
They'll protect us. They've got orders to stop anybody who tries to get near us. They think it's because Mr. Blake keeps a lot of money on hand. And he does. But that isn't it. We know that, don't we?
Grace, those men outside. Call them in, please. I want to talk to them.
You've got to go back to bed.
No, Grace.
Mr. Blake will be angry with me for not watching you better, for not taking better care of you. Come on. You go back to bed.
Don't touch me. Why? Oh,
you pulled away as if you hated me.
Oh, Grace, please.
Do you hate me? Your own mother?
Oh, don't do that, Grace. Don't talk like that.
And all the time I thought you liked this beautiful house. Look at the drapes. That thread that runs through them. It's real gold. Gold, the same as the highlight in your hair. You're so right for this. So perfect. But you hate me.
Oh, Grace, I don't hate you. I'm sick and I'm frightened and I want to go home. I want to see the people I love and I want to marry Ralph.
No. You're safe from him here.
Stay away, Grace.
I'll help you back upstairs. There's no sense in waiting for Mr. Prescott. He'll never get in.
I'm not waiting for Mr. Prescott.
If he should try to get in here, these men will stop him. They've got guns. And he'd be trespassing.
David? Grace, if I got back upstairs, will you do something?
What?
David Harum is on his way here. He may be here now. He and Mrs. Wells both.
Did you call him?
Penelope did. I asked her to.
And they may be here now?
Yes. Grace, they're my friends.
I'm your friend.
Yes, I know that. So you'll tell those men to leave them alone, won't you?
No.
You've got to.
They'll get just what they deserve for trying to cheat me.
Well, I'll do it myself. I'll tell them myself.
Sit down, Miss Grace.
Let go of me, Grace. Let go.
I'm not very large, but I'm strong. Strong enough to keep you from moving an inch.
Oh, I've got to warn David.
You won't warn anybody. Let them get what they deserve. You'll sit here and listen. I know what's best for you, and I've got to teach you that.
Grace, let go of me.
You're like my own daughter. And you hate me so much you don't trust me. Well, I'll have to show you, Miss Gray. You belong here, and you won't ever leave this house. I'll have to use Mr. Harum to prove that to you.
Meanwhile, David and Susan Wells have parked their car in the shadows and have started toward Jonathan's house. They're walking carefully, every nerve on edge. And now, as they reach an open strip of lawn, Susan grabs David's arm.
David, look out. There's a man by that hedge.
Where, Susan?
Over there. Do you see him?
Oh, my golly, yes. And he sees us. Quick, duck behind that tree. He's got a gun.
A gun?
Well, something flashed in the moonlight. Doggone it, I knew I should have made you stay in the car.
Oh, David.
Why don't you run for it? Maybe you could get away.
Yes, gazelling through the trees in the pitch darkness. I'd break my neck.
Here he comes, Susan. I can hear him.
What do we do, David? Is it Jonathan?
No. This is a great big fella. Looks like a moose.
We can't fight with him.
Well, if there's any fighting, you run.
Max, is that you?
What'd he say?
Max, is that you?
Oh, then there's two of them at least.
Hey, Max, where are you?
Oh, my heavens.
Gosh, I wish I had something heavy in my hands.
Maybe I can find a rock.
Don't you stir, Susan. He might shoot at you.
How about my shoe?
Your shoe?
Yes.
He sounds as if he's got a hard head. Be like a mosquito stinging a rhinoceros. Oh, great jumping Caesar.
Who's behind that tree?
He spotted us.
You better answer me. This 45 goes off real easy.
45, David. Is that bad?
It ain't a pea shooter, I can tell you that.
Hey, Max, is that you? Listen, I got orders to ask questions after I shoot. Is that how you want it?
Hello?
Max?
Sure, it's Max.
David.
What are you doing there?
Blake told us to cover the grounds, didn't he?
You don't sound like Max. Stand still, buddy. Let me get a look at you.
Got a flashlight, David?
I'll step out, Susan. You keep behind the tree. All right. You win.
What? Hey, you ain't Max.
No.
David Harum.
Oh, you know me, do you?
You was pointed out to me, Harum, when you was walking down the street one day. Somebody says, there's David Harum. He might give us trouble, so watch him. If he comes around the house, use your own judgment. With me, that means use my 45.
Jonathan Blake thinks of everything, don't he?
He don't miss much, and neither do I. Especially when a guy's standing this close.
You're making a mistake.
Oh, yeah?
You'll never get away with it.
Let me worry about that. Okay, Harum. This is it. Oh.
Is it, David?
You bet. Oh. Yeah, does it? Great guns.
Is he unconscious?
That's a very pretty way of saying it, Susan. What'd you hit him with?
This stone I found by the tree.
Well, thank you very much. Here, let me get this fella's revolver.
Oh, these men aren't fooling, David, and there's still Max. He's around somewhere.
Yeah, and we'll have to find him before he finds us. Confound it, Susan, I got no business letting you stay, but you certainly come in handy.
I'm ready, David, and I'm mad. Let's find Max.
More cautiously than ever, David and Susan start moving. They're both angry, but under their anger is the knowledge that they're playing for very high stakes. Every woman owes it to her reputation as a good housekeeper to know these facts. Today and every day, you can clean thoroughly, safely, and still finish as much as 1/2 hour sooner. Simply switch to the grease-dissolving cleaner, Babo, spelled B-A-B-O. Now, ladies, here's why we can make this amazing statement. We asked over 1,000 women to test Babo right in their own homes, comparing its cleaning speed with that of other cleansers. They reported that Babo was fastest on every job tackled. For instance, these women saved, on the average, 3 minutes just in cleaning a bathtub with Babo. They also reported equally remarkable time savings in cleaning pots and pans, kitchen sinks, gas stoves, wash basins, and refrigerators. And here's the reason for Babo's amazingly fast action. Today, 90% of your scouring is caused by grease. Unlike ordinary lazy cleansers with little or no action of their own, Babo was specifically created to dissolve grease. With grease gone, dirt and stains wipe gently away. No needless hard scouring on your precious enamel, porcelain, or aluminum. It's safe, thorough, and fast. You're through in record time. Incidentally, when you wash dishes, sprinkle a little Babo in your dishwater before you add the soap. Because it dissolves grease, Babo makes dishes wash easier and faster. Glassware and china fairly dry themselves and sparkle brighter. Today, get Babo in the famous green can with the big white letters, B-A-B-O. Harum will be on the air at the same time Monday, 11:45 a.m. Eastern Wartime. Ford Bond, speaking for B.T. Babbitt Incorporated, makers of the grease-dissolving cleaner, Babo. Now, all of you hog raisers helping supply America with fine pork, accept this free offer. Write today for a new 48-page book on farm sanitation. It gives practical, low-cost methods for sanitizing yards and pens. Includes methods that can help make your hogs grow sturdier, heavier, so you'll market more pounds of pork. Write for your copy today. Address Lycons, L-Y-C-O-N-S, care of this station. Ask for free Lycons farm book.
This is the National Broadcasting Company.
We're up to 12 noon on Friday, August 10th, 1945. And up next, a full quarter-hour newscast. We'll listen to that in just a moment. We continue here listening to what the American people heard on this date, August 10th, 1945. The stage is set for VJ Day, but it won't be today because we're waiting to hear what the governments had to say. Japan has said, well, we accept most of the terms of surrender, but you'll hear all about it here in this noon newscast with Don Goddard from NBC.
12 noon Eastern Wartime, your station, WEAF, NBC in New York.
This is Don Goddard with your news at noon. The war is not over. No offer of surrender has been received by the responsible heads of any Allied government. Those two facts in all this morning's well-heard developments can be stated in so many words, and they're about the only two facts in the rumors this morning. The war is not over. We're still fighting Japan in spite of the unconfirmed reports this morning that the Japanese had transmitted an offer to surrender if they could keep their emperor. To this moment, President Truman, waiting at the White House, has not received any such offer, although the Japs say they transmitted it through the Swedish and Swiss governments. Neither has there been any word from Stockholm or Bern, and the Japs have not included that information in any of their domestic broadcasts. We've had exactly 3 reports of this offer from the Japanese, all beamed to Europe and the United States. The first one just before 7:40 this morning, the second a few minutes later, and the third, a TASS broadcast from Moscow, which said the Japanese Minister of Foreign Affairs had informed the Soviet ambassador in Tokyo that Japan was ready to accept the terms of the Potsdam Ultimatum of July 26th. If the prerogative of the Japanese emperor is to his sovereignty is not prejudiced. The first word of that Jap surrender offer was broadcast over this station this morning while I was in the midst of my report on the latest war news at 7:30. That word came direct from our NBC newsroom in San Francisco, which picked up the Tokyo broadcast and relayed it here to New York over our private communication system. The time was 7:38 exactly. And since that, every moment, NBC has been giving special broadcasts, reporting on the air all the developments just as we hear them. Even before the text of the Jap broadcast had been transmitted, we here at NBC were at work, lining up complete coverage of this great news that may mean the end of the war in the Pacific, but does not as yet. Our Washington Bureau got in touch with the White House, and later the announcement came through that President Truman had called a special conference of his advisors. Secretary of State Burns was summoned first. He came running. And then the President called in other members of his cabinet. But the President was acting on the same reports that our NBC monitors in San Francisco had picked up from Tokyo, and not on diplomatic dispatches. The White House has not, up to this moment, received anything official from the Japs. The Tokyo broadcast said it was issuing its surrender offer through the Swiss and Swedish governments, but it was less than an hour after the Tokyo report that Mr. Truman called his advisor into special session. Then Secretary Burns came out of that session and announced that the United States would not accept Japan's offer for peace without consulting the other governments concerned, that is, if Japan's offer ever came through. And he added, "We have not received any official offer." Secretary of the Navy Forrestal made a statement, too, saying that he hoped the Tokyo report was the real thing, and he added this remark that he fully expected a development in the situation very soon. That White House conference lasted 25 minutes. Only Secretary Burns remained with the President. There was no official announcement from Mr. Truman, but over in London the reports started popping around. Those London reports said that American, British, Russian, and Chinese leaders were conferring urgently by telephone. The unofficial opinion in Washington is that the Jap offer is authentic, but that even so it will require some time to complete arrangements for signing a formal surrender document that would call a halt to the shooting war. It's believed in the capital that Japan will be required to sign a surrender presented to her by the Allies, but without negotiation and without any discussion. This is the procedure that was followed with the Germans at Reims 3 months ago. There's been some curiosity about the abrupt interruption of that Tokyo broadcast that reported the Jap surrender offer. The broadcast ended without completing the transmission of the text of the offer made through Sweden and Switzerland. But this may have been due purely to technical reasons, although there's a possibility that this may indicate some internal difficulties with Japan, within Japan, among the warlords themselves, perhaps. That is pure speculation, pure guesswork. The British cabinet went into emergency session over in London almost at the same time that President Truman called his advisors. And some observers in London are saying that the Jap offer would be acceptable to the British, but that, too, is not official, because there's no official reaction yet from London. They have not received the so-called surrender offer as yet either. And there's no official reaction from Moscow, although Moscow radio reported that the Jap foreign minister had let Russia know about his country's willingness to accept the Potsdam Declaration. And so at this moment we have all this news of the sudden but not unexpected developments in a war. Tokyo radio says Japan is willing to quit if the Allies don't harm or hurt the influence of Emperor Hirohito. And the Allies are getting together in Washington, London, Moscow, and presumably Chongqing to decide whether this offer might be acceptable if and when it is received. If and when. A late dispatch says that Prime Minister At.the has not as yet received any official communication from the Japanese. The Prime Minister said, quote, "In the meantime, everyone should continue working," unquote. To which we add, amen, and we add the word, let's fight also. It must be remembered that the Jap offer to surrender on the basis of the Potsdam Ultimatum does not meet with the specific terms of that ultimatum. The Jap government says it is ready to accept the terms of the joint declaration issued at Potsdam, but with the understanding that the declaration does not change the dignity or the power of Emperor Hirohito. The Potsdam Ultimatum was a demand upon Japan to surrender unconditionally or be utterly destroyed. That word unconditionally may rule out what the Japs are saying about their emperor, if they ever say it officially. This possibility is present because Hirohito's name was not mentioned in the joint declaration issued last week at Potsdam. Right here it might be well, that is in July at Potsdam, July 26th. Right here it might be well to go back and re-examine the terms of that Potsdam Ultimatum, which had 11 points. The first point calls for the elimination for all time of the authority and influence of those who led Japan into her career of conquest. That's the all-important point at the moment. And it may be the point that can upset the Jap offer, if it's made in the terms that the Jap radio reported this morning. One interpretation of that point could be that the ultimatum demands the ousting of the present setup of the government in Japan. If we're to eliminate for all time the authority and influence of those who led Japan into a career of conquest, we can't stop at the present warlords in that country. Japan's career of conquest goes too far back for that. The only authority and influence that has remained constant in Japan since she started out to rule the Far East has been the power of the emperor. Of course, this point might be negotiated, and on that basis of negotiations, the Allies may accept the Jap offer. The emperor in Japan is also the head of the church there, the religion. He's what the Japs call the son of heaven, and so it may be judicious for us to go along with the Japs on that score. That's one thought in Washington. If only on the premise that we believe in freedom of religion in any country, even in Japan. But our acceptance of the Jap offer may hinge upon another demand, and that demand could be that Hirohito's power be confined to religious affairs, that he keep his hands off the government otherwise. The crux of the whole situation right now is the position of Hirohito. To the leaders of Japan, the removal of the emperor apparently would be ultimate disaster, a disaster which they are not ready to accept, despite the apparent hopelessness of Japan today. The Jap surrender offer emphasizes the unique position that Hirohito holds among the world's rulers. The Jap people believe that he's a living god. Their propagandists have told them that so long they now believe it. The 124th ruler of a dynasty that goes back to their beginning of time. And he's a personification of the national religion in Japan, which we know is Shintoism. Hirohito to the Japs is not only the temporal head of the state, but also the religious head of the nation. He's the representative of all the Shinto deities, which include his own ancestors, and the great mass of Japs, who've known nothing but the emperor worship since their cradle days, probably cannot conceive of a world without a son of heaven. The shock of Hirohito's removal might come to the devout Jap as a more staggering blow than an atomic bomb. They don't seem to realize that actually Hirohito wields little power. He's been described as a more or less unwilling party to the diabolic schemes of the militarists, who gained control of the throne back in the 30s, and have used its power to lead the Jap nation to disaster. In the absence of any official reaction, we can assume that the chief objector to this Jap surrender offer at the present time would be Soviet Russia. To the Russians, the Jap emperor is synonymous with Hitler. To them, he's a dictator with absolute power over people who have no means by which to overthrow him. And it seems not likely that Marshal Stalin would agree to accept the surrender offer on any condition that keeps Hirohito's dignity and power intact. The other points of the Potsdam Ultimatum include a demand that Jap sovereignty be limited to the main Jap islands of Honshu, Hokkaido, Kyushu, Shikoku, and a few minor islands in the neighborhood. Another point calls for the complete disarmament of Jap armed forces. Still another important point is the one that would strip Japan of all her conquests since as far back as 1895. This means Japan would have to give up Manchuria, Formosa, the Pescadores, and all other territories taken from China. Korea would be free and independent, and Japan would have to relinquish all Pacific islands seized during the First World War, including the Marianas, the Carolines, Hong Kong, Malaya, Wake Island, the still occupied sections of Burma, the Netherlands East Indies, French Indochina, and Thailand. This point, stripping Japan of all her conquests, was contained in the Cairo Declaration, too. That declaration was issued in 1943 by President Roosevelt, Prime Minister Churchill, and Marshal Stalin. And the Potsdam Ultimatum on this point merely reiterated the Cairo demand on that score. But meanwhile, just as it was while the Germans were quitting over in Europe, so it is today in the Pacific. The shooting war is still going on. Our Third Fleet is sending its carrier planes over Japan for the second straight day. Our B-29s are pounding military targets wherever there's a Jap soldier. And Russia is sending her powerful Siberian armies deeper into Manchuria and into Korea. The meager reports we've had so far on that atomic bomb attack on Nagasaki indicate that the Jap city has followed Hiroshima into oblivion. Our pilots who saw that explosion of that super bomb from a great distance say it was too tremendous to believe or to describe, and that the smoke mushroomed nearly 5 miles into the stratosphere. The sight was even more awe-inspiring than the bombing of Hiroshima, and so it's safe to assume that the damage, too, was even worse there in Nagasaki. Yes, another Jap city has vanished. The shooting war continues, even as the end appears to be in sight, and many an American will die before the final shot is fired. Only a few moments ago, the Navy reported the U.S. submarine Lagarto is overdue and presumably lost out there in the Pacific. Of course, the next of kin and crew of the crew have been notified. A bulletin from Washington. The Navy announced today that 107 more naval vessels and 45 landing craft have been lost or become unusable from enemy action or perils of the sea. The shooting war is still going on. These bulletins still remind us of that. News of the Jap surrender offer, the rumors of it, caused instant demonstrations among our troops everywhere. Out in Manila, the enlisted men at General MacArthur's headquarters whooped it up. Our sailors at Guam Fleet Headquarters nearly tore the roof off the barracks there, so the reports say. And even in Berlin there was jubilation, although many of our doughboys in the German capital were giving the news careful analysis. Some of them took the attitude that the surrender should be unconditional, just as the German surrender was. And here in New York, there was another demonstration among our troops who returned today from Europe. The waterfront area of Staten Island, where the troop ships docked, was alive with cheering and shouting doughboys. Many of these soldiers, you know, were earmarked for the Pacific. And even the stock market here in New York had an instant reaction when trading opened. There were floods of buying orders pouring into brokerage houses down on Wall Street before the exchange itself opened. And then, when the market did open, there was a gain of more than 2 points, average 2 points, in the first half hour. It's been only a little more than a year, you know, since the Japs issued their own peace terms. It was May 23rd, 1944 to be exact, but as Shakespeare once said, the old order changes. Those Jap peace terms then demanded complete destruction of American naval power and maritime trade and the abolition of private banking institutions and trade unions when they conquered America. Furthermore, that Jap peace offer, made so arrogantly only last year, demanded the destruction of all our shipyards except those where river and coastal vessels are made. And it called for a political setup modeled after the pure sovereignty of Japan. The old order certainly does change. The only official communique between Japan and Switzerland has been the Japanese protest on the atomic bomb, which eventually will destroy Japan unless she does get out of this war. Radio Tokyo, speaking for the country who pulled the sneak attack on Pearl Harbor, speaking for the country that's brutalized and murdered civilians and prisoners of war, the country that has raped China and broken nearly all the rules in the books of civilization, called the atom bomb a barbarous atrocity that has snuffed out a city's whole population without giving them a chance to lift a finger in defense or in defiance. The Japanese government, of course, was speaking of Hiroshima. Her warlords have not yet dared to tell the people about the raid on Nagasaki, the second atom bombing, nor have they informed the Japanese of President Truman's ultimatum of last night, that they must get out of the war or be bombed out. Nor have they told them today of this so-called offer to make peace if the emperor can be retained. Well, it's a nice summer day here in New York City and vicinity. The weatherman says it will continue to. This afternoon, his forecast is bright and sunny with a temperature of around 85, about 8 degrees higher than it is right now at Radio City, where the humidity is 56%. Clear and cool tonight, tomorrow, another day like today. Let us repeat, the war is not over. This is not yet VJ Day, not VJ Day. President Truman, nor any responsible head of any of the Allied governments have received yet the so-called Jap surrender offer. This is Don Goddard with your news at noon. I'll see you tomorrow.
Don Goddard reports the news from the NBC newsroom in New York. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
We're now up to 12:15, and we're going to hear a New York chat show called Maggie's Private Wire. That's next. You're listening to the news and what went on WEAF in New York on Friday, August 10th, 1945. Surrender is coming up soon. As the American people were waiting for surrender, you can relive it on this special podcast, just like we're bringing it to you. Up next, Maggie's Private Wire, as it was broadcast 12:15 Eastern Wartime on Friday, August 10th, 1945.
12:15 Eastern Wartime. This is station WEAF, NBC in New York.
Hello? Why, yes, this is Maggie McNellis.
And this is Maggie's Private Wire. Here she is, our own gal about town, our columnist of the air, our super sleuth of Broadway and Hollywood with all the lowdown on the latest gossip, just plain glamorous Maggie McNellis.
Thanks, Herb, and hello, everybody.
Hello, Maggie. Say, what cooks in the Friday clam bake department?
Well, we hit the jackpot today, Herb. We have 2 guests.
Blanche Yerka, who is appearing on Broadway, and The Wind is 90, and Enrico Caruso, Jr., who has just completed a successful singing engagement at New Orleans Roosevelt Hotel. Then, as usual, we have the transcriptions, and I have a dinner of the week.
Oh, very good.
And now I want to introduce one of the most talented actresses in the American theater, Blanche Yerka. Miss Yerka, I guess everybody knows that you're considered a great actress, but if there were any doubters, The Wind is 90 would certainly convince them.
Well, thank you very much, Maggie. My part in The Wind is 90 really does interest me because it's so different from anything I've done in a long, long time.
Yeah.
A very simple, kindly woman, the mother of a dead serviceman who returns to his home to try and help his family through the adjustment necessary when they learn that he's dead.
Yes, and I should think that would be a very difficult role.
Yeah.
You know, Miss Yerka, I liked you very much in the Song of Bernadette.
Well, that's fine. I played Aunt Bernard, as you know, and I'm awfully glad you liked it, Herb.
Say, by the way, which do you like better, the stage or the screen?
Oh, I like them both. Of course, they're entirely different. And, of course, too, one of the reasons I like the movies is that you meet so many interesting people.
Yes, and you just finished a movie, didn't you?
Yes, it's called The Southerner. It's a sort of cheerful Grapes of Wrath, I should say. It's going to be released, I think, next Saturday at the Globe Theater.
Oh, grand. See, you know, Miss Yerka, it would take, well, I guess an entire day to talk about your theatrical career. There's been so much of it, but I would like to touch the highlights anyway.
All right, Maggie. Shoot, what did you like to know?
Well, for instance, when did you first become interested in the theater?
I can't remember a time when I wasn't.
Oh, really?
Oh, goodness, yes. By the way, did you know, and this is important considering that we have Enrico Caruso, Jr. as our guest star, it reminds me that I was once connected with the Metropolitan Opera Company.
Really? What operas?
Parsifal.
Oh, you're so talented, Miss Yerka. What role did you sing?
Ah, well, that's the trick, you see. I didn't sing.
Oh.
I was just a young student in a school that they had established there, and to comfort me for not being able to, well, not being mature enough to sing any of the small parts, they let me carry the Grail.
Oh.
Yes, I had no singing, just pantomime.
Oh, I see.
It did, however, start me on my theatrical career.
Oh, you switched from the Metropolitan to Broadway?
Well, it wasn't quite that simple, Maggie. For one thing, I lost my voice through overwork. And then I tried the usual channels of getting into the theater with the usual lack of success. However, finally I did get to see David Belasco, the biggest theater man at that time, and he gave me a tiny part in one of his productions. It was just about that time that I met a girl who later became a great friend of mine. She left Belasco to work in a new industry, a very modest little industry. It was being run by a company called the Biograph Pictures, and she got $5 a day. The girl, of course, was Mary Pickford.
Say, I suppose you've appeared with many of the people who, like yourself, are now stars.
Oh, yes, Herb. The first time my name ever went up in lights, it was in a stock company in Philadelphia. Edward Everett Horton was my juvenile lead. And then I remember when I played in a play called The Lawbreaker, there was a thoroughly discouraged young actor named Freddie Bickle playing my brother. Oh, he was ready to quit the theater. He was quite devoid of any faith in his talents. Well, fortunately, he didn't quit because he later became known as Frederick March.
Oh, say, devoid of faith in his talents. And, well, there's always hope for me, I guess.
Oh, sure, anything can happen. See, you know, Blanche, you were in one play that I sure would have liked to have been in.
Which one was that?
The one you did at Yale, The Last Days of the Turbine.
I think I know what you mean. I was the one woman in a cast with 200 men.
Yeah.
All
typical
Yale
of Maggie,
football
yeah.
players.
Yes, typical is right.
I've always regretted not having brought that play to Broadway. It was really very successful.
Yeah, but you were so successful in so many. With Lawton Fontanne and Catherine Cornell and Hedda Gabler and The Wild Duck and Lysistrata and Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, and how about the movies?
Yeah.
Weren't you Madame Lafarge in A Tale of Two Cities?
That's right, Herb. Hardest part about that for me was learning to knit.
Yeah.
I think I'm the only woman in America that never knitted.
Oh. See, with Russia so prominently in the news these days, Miss Yerka, it occurs to me to ask about your experiences in Russia.
Oh, yes. Well, Maggie, I went over there for the Moscow Theater Festival. I was only there for 10 days, but I gained a great respect for the Russian approach to the theater.
You did?
Yes, it's so vital, and it's not at all hidebound. And I had a wonderful 2-hour interview with Stanislavski at his villa. He was then in his 70s, and I think he's the most wonderful man that I've ever met. And on the trip home, I met Senator Wagner of New York, and most of the trip was spent, most of the walking around the decks were spent trying to get him interested in the need of creating an American version of the Russian National Theater. Well, it evidently bore fruit because later Senator Wagner presented a bill to Congress which called for a national theater charter.
Say, you did a very good job in the inspiration department.
Yeah.
And thanks for doing a very good job here today, Blanche Yerka. And say, on the subject of questions, here's a leading question, leading you directly to a fortune of fun at your nearest Lowe's theater. Wouldn't you bring on the girls if you were a romantic sailor stationed in Miami with $200 million and plenty of time for love and music and moonlight maneuvers? Well, that's what happens in Paramount's merry mix-up of beautiful gals, music, and mirth, Bring On the Girls. Bring On the Girls is the Technicolor Pin-Up Beauty Show of the Year, starring Veronica Lake, Sonny Tufts, Eddie Bracken, and Marjorie Reynolds, with the new dancing sensation Johnny Coy and the incomparable music of Spike Jones and his City Slickers. So be sure to see Bring On the Girls. Hit number 2 is Ministry of Fear, one of the year's best mystery thrillers, starring Ray Milland and Marjorie Reynolds. Both pictures are now playing in Manhattan at Lowe's Lexington, 72nd Street, 83rd Street, 175th Street, and Olympia Theaters, in the Bronx at Lowe's Paradise, and in Jamaica at Lowe's Valencia.
Say, how about the dinner of the week you mentioned?
Oh, yeah, what a wonderful dinner.
Yeah, where was it?
At the Seafair. That's on 1st Avenue, just south 57th Street.
Seafair, that's for seafood, eh?
Yeah, it's so good.
Well, what'd you have?
Well, I had shrimp cocktail first, but my dinner guest had clams casino and steamed clams, which were terrific, if you like them.
I do.
Then you should order that. And then I had broiled lobster, and it was from another. And the French fried potato syrup, oh, boy.
Hey, you're making me hungry.
Well, all you have to do is to hie yourself up to the Seafair. Oh, and I almost forgot to tell you about the salad.
What about it?
Delish. Such a dressing I have never tasted.
You know, Maggie, I'm beginning to think you're recommending the Seafair as a good place to eat.
I am, definitely.
Was there a dessert?
Yeah, but I was so full I couldn't eat any. However, the rest of them had chocolate graham cracker pie and coffee, of course.
Yeah.
And I think I should mention that the decorations are very attractive. Glass bricks and running water behind glass and plaster fish in relief. All very nice.
Oh, good food and nice surroundings. For what more can you ask?
Well, nothing except perhaps for,
Superstar, lots more stuff from Superstar. Richer, longer lasting too. There's a set of Super
Once upon a Monday dreary, washing clothes so weak and weary, came a knock upon my door. 'Twas my neighbor, nothing more. Tell me, neighbor, tell me, pray, is there any soap today that will give me lots more suds so I can clean these dirty duds? Quoth my neighbor, Super Suds. But how can I cut down on scrubbing and that everlasting rubbing? Quoth my neighbor, Super Suds.
Super Suds, lots of stuff from Superstar.
Here's an easy way to get more red points. Keep a fat salvage can or bowl on the back of the stove to remind you to save every single drop of fat. You'll be surprised how much you can save and how many extra red points you will get.
And now our second guest for today is a young man who has a very famous name and who's beginning to make one of his own, Enrico Caruso, Jr. Tell me, Enrico, do you find it difficult to follow in your father's octaves?
Well, yes, Maggie. At first it was. I sometimes find that when I sing, people don't listen to me. They listen for my father.
Yeah.
There was only one Caruso.
Well, there is that little matter, I suppose.
Yeah.
I now realize that no two people hear the same thing. For instance, after one performance, a critic said to me, "You have your father's top notes all right, but not his bottom."
Oh.
Immediately afterward, another will congratulate me on my father's bottom notes, but will shake his head over the top notes. Then a third will console me with the fact that while I have neither my father's tops nor bottom notes, at least I do fairly well in the middle ones. Don't you see?
Yes, I see. It's absolutely hopeless. Well, but it isn't really, because those same critics are recognizing your talent in the popular field.
And by the way, Mr. Caruso, what would your father think of your going into the popular field rather than into opera?
Well, it's not really too different. When my father made his singing debut in Italy, the opera companies of those days corresponded to our popular forms of entertainment in this country. Now, every city, town, and hamlet in Italy had its own opera company. Hundreds of them existed. When my father started singing, it was the only form of popular entertainment. There were no nightclubs, no reviews, and no motion pictures.
So actually you are following in your father's footsteps, entering the popular field of music, huh? Tell me, was your father in favor of your becoming a singer, Enrico?
Yes and no.
Well, how do you mean?
Well, he was determined that his son was to follow a career that he had always dreamed of in his youth.
Oh, which was?
Naval engineering. Although very few people know it, my father was an engineer.
Oh.
Therefore, all of my education was slanted in that direction.
And when did you decide that singing and not engineering were for you?
I guess it was from the very beginning, Maggie. For years, I studied with Adolfo de la Huerta, one of the greatest living teachers of bel canto and a former president of Mexico. Now, I waited until he gave me the green signal, and that was this year.
Oh.
So I started singing professionally.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be thrilled to hear Enrico Caruso Jr. But say, by the way, where can we hear you sing?
Well, I just finished an engagement at the Roosevelt Hotel in New Orleans, and I expect to open a musical here this fall.
Oh, that'll be peachy.
You know, Maggie, I've been asked a lot of questions, but nobody has ever asked me what my greatest ambition is.
And what is it?
It's to play a comedy role in a Broadway musical.
Oh, wonderful. Well, maybe that's what you'll do this fall.
I hope
and
so.
say, before you leave for the program today, tell me this. Did your father have any special advice for you that we might pass on to our listeners?
Well, yes, he did, Maggie.
Oh, what was it?
Well, Father had 3 words which summed up the entire profession. Work, work, work.
Oh, I was afraid of that. Well, those words of Enrico Caruso are very true, and the words of Enrico Caruso Jr. were very welcome on this program. Thanks very much, Enrico Caruso Jr., for being our guest star today. You were a hit, and,
There's a happy hit on its way, starring that rollicking comedy sensation, Danny Kaye. It's Samuel Goldwyn's wonderful merry-go-round of laughter and song, girls and music, and frolic galore. Wonder Man. Danny's the funniest, wackiest guy on the screen because this time he plays twins. And what a scream he turns out to be, what with 2 glamorous lady loves on his hands. Beautiful Virginia Mayo, Bob Hope's heartthrob in The Princess and the Pirate, and the new dynamic dancing star discovery, Vera Ellen. With Danny Kaye as the colossal clown, Wonder Man is a panic of thrills, music, and screaming fun. And once you see it, you'll no longer wonder why this year's Wonder Picture is Wonder Man. By all means, see Danny Kaye, Virginia Mayo, and Vera Ellen in Wonder Man.
And now for the latest news via my private wire. Radio Daily says that Herb Sheldon is radio's best-dressed announcer. Incidentally, Herb was the first person to announce that Russia had declared war. He scooped the entire world. John Dahl, who made such an auspicious screen debut opposite Betty Davis in The Corn is Green, has been given 3 months' leave of absence by Warner Brothers to appear with the Hasty Heart Stage Company on tour. He will do the movie version later. And Michael Joseph Ward is learning that you don't have to be in your 80s to be too old for the films. He reached the ripe age of 1 year on July 13th, and on the same day, Monogram executives gathered around the little actor to debate whether or not Mike was too aged for a role in Rainbow Valley. And did you know that the Associated Press says that Enrico Caruso Jr. is a good schmaltz singer?
That means a sweet singer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Say, do you think I use schmaltz when I say you've been listening at lunch to Maggie McNellis, WEAF's columnist of the year? Well, for more news, confidential comments, and gossip about Broadway and Hollywood, plus a special interview with starlet Tony Seven, listen in at 12:15 Monday and every day, Monday through Friday, for Maggie McNellis
and Maggie's Private Wire.
Maggie McNellis with portions of the program recorded and transcribed as a WEAF feature presentation. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
Now we're up to 12:30 p.m. and time for hear news from the Pacific from NBC. That's next. We continue following the events of Friday, August 10th, 1945, 80 years ago today. What's going to happen? Will the Allies accept the Japanese counterproposal for surrender? Let's listen in to this news from the Pacific as it was broadcast on this date 80 years ago.
12:30 p.m. Eastern War Time. 660 on your dial. This is station WEAF, New York.
The National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated stations present From the Pacific. On this program, Monday through Friday each week, you hear NBC correspondents overseas. You listen to American fighting men in far distant places telling their experiences. Conducting the program, NBC commentator Wilson Foster, who not long ago brought you eyewitness accounts direct from Pacific battlefronts. Mr. Foster.
How do you do, everyone? Well, this is the period of worldwide high blood pressure as we await official word on Tokyo's declaration that she will accept the Potsdam Declaration. I'll sum up the situation briefly. At 5:37 this morning Pacific wartime, Tokyo announced that the Japanese government had decided to accept the Potsdam Declaration with one stipulation, that Hirohito be allowed to remain. President Truman immediately called a meeting with cabinet members Burns, Stimson, and Forrestal. These gentlemen met for approximately 45 minutes, and at the end of that time made no disclosures other than they still had not received any official note from the Japanese government. Japan had indicated their acceptance to the Potsdam Ultimatum and had been sent through neutral channels in Sweden and Switzerland. So now comes the period of waiting. How long it will take for the Allied powers to reply to Japan, no one knows. It shouldn't take over 48 hours. Truman, Burns, Stimson, and Forrestal have probably tentatively set America's reply already. Great Britain's reply will come from Prime Minister Clement Attlee, Russia's reply from Premier Stalin, and China's reply from Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek. The United States will not make any independent reply to the Japanese offer. There will have to be complete agreement among the big four powers before the war will end. But of this we feel certain today, that Japan's offer will be accepted. First, for this reason. The Potsdam Ultimatum made no mention of the Emperor, although it did say stern justice would be meted out to all war criminals. Well, this brings us back to the question, is the Emperor a war criminal? Just how responsible has he been for Japanese atrocities? But right now, From the Pacific takes you across the seas, and let's go there for a reaction report from the island of Guam. Come in, George Thomas Foster.
This is George Thomas Foster on Guam. It is now 2:30 in the morning out here, and a little more than 4 hours ago, the first rumors began to circulate. Rumors that Japan had accepted the Potsdam Ultimatum. A night watch stander rushed up saying, "It's all over. I just heard it on the radio." I want you to know the enlisted man's reaction to this momentous news. So I am turning this microphone over to Harvey Twyman, combat correspondent for the Coast Guard, who has rounded up some of his shipmates. Harvey has 4 D-Day landings under his belt, including Iwo Jima and Okinawa, and was making preparations for the next invasion. Harvey, take it from here.
Here with me in the studios are 3 other Coast Guardsmen. John Papson, photographer's mate from Birmingham, Michigan, Martin Bert from New Orleans, and Coast Guard Chief Specialist Gerald McCann from Boston. Chief, when did you first hear of the action by Japan?
Sometime after 10 o'clock. The lights were out in the barracks area. Radios are supposed to be off, too, but ours was on, as usual. Someone remarked the Guam station was working overtime. Then about 10:30, the dance music was interrupted by a short announcement. A couple of chiefs started yelling, "Hey, listen to this." I yelled, "Pipe down so we can hear what he's saying." As soon as I was sure that Japan had accepted the terms, everybody in the hut started yelling and cheering and pounding each other on the back. I ran across the street in my skivvy to wake up a friend of mine, but he was awake. Everybody was. Even the guys who had to go on watch in an hour or so.
What was your personal reaction?
Well, it wasn't a surprise. Ever since the atomic bomb and the Russian declaration, I've been expecting this. I took bets on it. One man said it was a matter of months. I said days. When he came up tonight to pay me, he said he was never so happy to pay a debt in all his life.
How much was it, Jerry?
$10. But you know, Harvey, I think it's a shame that President Roosevelt isn't alive to hear this.
Yes, it is, Jerry. What are your post-war plans?
Well, first I'd like to figure a way of going back to the States around the other way, through India.
I hope you make it. Now, here's another Coast Guardsman, John Papson, whose family lives in Birmingham, Michigan, just outside Detroit. John is a combat photographer for the Coast Guard. He's made pictures of the assault troops landing at Iwo Jima and Okinawa. John, where were you when you heard the news tonight?
Well, we just came back from Motion Picture. It was an exceptionally good show, and we sat in our hut discussing the show and performance. That was around 10 o'clock. I was undressed and in the sack. Some of the other fellows were still fixing their mosquito nets and spraying their hut. The lights were out, and the radio station had just signed off. I guess I must have fallen asleep, because the next thing I knew, I heard a lot of yelling from the hut next to ours. We all jumped out of our sacks and ran to the other hut. We heard the news on their radio.
What was the reaction in the hut when you heard the news?
Well, the place was a madhouse. Besides the usual occupants of the hut, all of our gang were in there also, and everybody talking at once.
What was the talk about?
Well, they were wondering if the Allies would accept the terms, and it was finally decided that Japan wasn't asking for too much. When we got to the Emperor. This term should be accepted, though.
Okay, John, thanks to you. Now here's Coast Guardsman Martin Bert from New Orleans. He was out here in one of the first LSTs to come from the States when we were working on a shoestring. He was in the Elises before Tarawa and in the Solomons at the time of Bougainville. Then he came out again on another LST and made Iwo Jima. Martin, when did you first hear the news tonight?
Well, we were all turned in for the night about 4 hours ago, around 10 o'clock. We heard somebody outside the hut talking about the Japanese peace terms. As soon as I heard it, I had a sinking feeling in my stomach. And I thought there wasn't any use getting worked up about it. Everybody in the hut felt the same way. They said, "No, it's just a rumor." But the longer I lay there, the worse I got. I finally decided to come up to headquarters to find out if it was true. I started to drive up, got in the truck. Half the men in my hut climbed in with me. They couldn't take it either.
How do you suppose your wife feels about this news, Martin?
I imagine she's as happy as I am. We've only been married a year, and I've been overseas 10 months of that time. So we've got a honeymoon to resume.
Okay. Thank you, Martin Bert. There you are, Coast Guardsmen at Guam, electrified tonight by the news from Japan, and already planning their return to the States. This is Harvey Twyman of the Coast Guard. I return you to NBC's San Francisco.
Thank you, Guam. We like to view the current situation as realistically as possible. So now we bring you the words of a man who knows the Japanese, knows war at its very worst. NBC's Bert Iilan, who only 5 months ago returned to the United States after 37 months in a Jap internment camp in the Philippines. Mr. Iilan.
It is hard to realize that before this day is over, the war with Japan and all war may well be finished and done with. Those of us who spent years under the dominating power of the Japanese military better appreciate, I think, what it means to us and to the world to end once and for all that terrifying influence. Japan's condition of surrender, if it is a condition, that Emperor Hirohito be allowed to retain his throne, could well be in line with the Allied plans for the future of Japan. I believe that Hirohito could be a stabilizing influence in bringing Japan back to a peaceful and democratic nation. Many people, no doubt, have given the Japanese emperor too much credit as the instigator and leader of the Jap war effort. If we can think of the emperor in the same terms as we do of the King of England, for example, we must realize that despite his unique role as a religious as well as the titular head of the Japanese people, he has been completely subjugated to the will and the power of the warlords. We can better evaluate his real position. To eliminate the emperor would be tantamount to banning the Japanese religion. This in itself would be contrary to our principle of freedom of religion. Ideally, of course, would be the proposition of divorcing church and state. But just how that could be accomplished under such a complex setup as now exists in Japan would be one of the major problems of our peace table conferees. Be that as it may, the offer of Japan, if it be a valid one, to accept the Potsdam terms can mean only one thing. Japan is ready to quit, and the one request to save the emperor should not present an unsurmountable problem. Every minute counts now. It counts heavy in men and money. We spent $2 billion to perfect the atomic bomb. We are spending about $200 million a day to carry on this war. If this bomb, as it no doubt has shortened the war for even 10 days, the project has paid for itself in dollars and cents. But 10 days of shortened warfare means more than all the money in the world. It means the saving of thousands of lives. Every 2 minutes of the day and night, some American boy is killed or wounded while the war goes on. That is why I say that minutes count. We must be resolved, however, that despite any cost of men and money, we will not and cannot accept any terms from Japan short of unconditional surrender. If, in any sense of the word, Japan's offer does not meet with our aims and ideas of unconditional surrender, then I am sure that every real American, yes, even our people who are right now in the hands of the Japs in military or civilian prison camps, would say, America, fight on.
Thank you, Bert Iilan. Once again, let's pick up reaction, this time in the Philippines. We switch you now to Merrill Muller in Manila.
This is Merrill Muller reporting from Manila. Japan, on the threshold of decision, finds surrender is her only escape from annihilation. The Tokyo radio reports heard here today created intense excitement among those I have talked to. Coupled with the extraordinary meeting of the Suzuki cabinet, it appears Japan has reached the end of her road and is preparing herself internally for exposure to Western justice. The power of Pearl Harbor has ricocheted into harakiri for the Japan we have known in current affairs. One way or another, it is a new Japan that the United Nations are now facing. In all this hubbub of excitement, one man calmly studies the latest reports here and puts his notes and background together for the answers. He is General MacArthur's G2, or Chief of Intelligence, the department that knows all about the enemy. Major General Charles Willoughby is a term hard regular Army officer of German descent. His father was a former field general of the German Army, but General Willoughby was taken from Germany when still a youth and settled in Pennsylvania under his American mother's name years ago. A four-language linguist, he has studied in the best military schools of America and Europe and served with distinction in the First World War, Latin America, on Bataan, and on MacArthur's staff since. Once an Army instructor at Fort Leavenworth, he wrote a number of professional journals. General Willoughby, decorated several times for bravery and ability against the Japanese, is wary of the enemy and very suspicious. The Jap is like a maddened, wounded beast, he says, and fights hardest when cornered in a hopeless situation. The Jap Army could afford, he adds, to lose 20 divisions per year and not weaken. They love such losses, General Willoughby says, as national military honor. The public, once used to it, and did eat it up. But those words, the public, is the catch line, the General adds with emphasis. The ability of Japan to wage war depended on the public to offer up sons for the fighting forces and weapons for those forces to use. Ordinary bombing reduced weapon production, but now there is the atomic bomb, and the whole situation has changed. The atomic bomb wipes out not only the factories, homes, and services of the public, but it kills in large numbers the very spinal column of any nation's war effort, all strata of population. The Japanese public may have been prepared to suffer large losses among the fighting personnel, but it isn't ready to accept deaths and casualties among its own ranks by the atomic bomb. Every declaration of Radio Tokyo since the bombing of Hiroshima bears that out. The Japs psychologically are at the quitting point. The latest and most complete report here of the Radio Tokyo surrender appeal is that emanating from Army radio trucks touring Manila's streets. It's 1:30 in the morning out here, and men are still screaming, yelling, and trying to celebrate. Military police quietly are herding the men back to their camps after these cheering and shooting sprees with the admonition to wait until it's all official. To help the MPs with this control plan, Army loudspeaker trucks, gab wagons as the GIs call them, are touring the streets and telling the soldiers all the developments as known here by the local Office of War Information. The radio truck, which just went by the office, reported to the men in the street, and I quote, Radio Tokyo has announced Japan will surrender in accordance with the Potsdam Ultimatum, provided the Japanese Emperor remains as head of the Japanese people. There is absolutely no official confirmation of this peace offer. Washington is studying a proposal which reached Allied governments through diplomatic channels, but this also is very unofficial, unquote. You can imagine what that means to these GIs out here as they see victory and a near-home possibility at last after the long and stinking trail through the jungle islands of MacArthur's comeback road across the Pacific. And now back to the NBC newsroom in San Francisco.
Thank you, Merrill Muller. A big question. What's going to happen if we don't accept Japan's surrender ultimatum? Now, for an answer to that question, here's veteran NBC correspondent Robert McCormick.
Well, Bud, if the Japs aren't serious about surrendering, and if they are, but we won't take them seriously, I'm afraid we're really in for it. I think we'll have one of the weariest, most drawn-out, most deadly wars of all history on our hands. The Japs obviously are already whipped, but we saw what they did on Saipan and Tinian and Guam and Iwo and Okinawa after they were whipped. And I think we'd have a large-scale repetition of these smaller battles. I suppose every last miserable Jap soldier would continue to fight with guns, rocks, sticks, and his bare hands until he was killed or until he starved to death.
Well, thank you very much, Robert McCormick. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes NBC's report from the Pacific for today. This is Wilson Foster speaking from San Francisco.
From the Pacific comes to you from San Francisco. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
Now, it's 12:45. You're 15 minutes away from the very, very popular Mary Margaret McBride program. But first, we're going to have a quarter hour called The Music Room. And that's what you're going to hear next from WEAF New York, Friday, August 10th, 1945. Let's listen to a quarter hour of music from WEAF New York in this quarter hour called The Music Room.
12:45 Eastern Wartime. This is station WEAF NBC in New York. Broadcasting Company opens the door of the music room. 15 minutes with Jerry Jerome, his men of music, and the Murphy sisters. your tip from the first number on today's program, think of the post-war world of travel to colorful Latin America and romanticize a bit with those Connecticut gals, the Murphy sisters. The song, Negra Consentida, My Pet Brunette.
Take me. How can you forsake me? Why won't you be true? See, dear, have pity on me, dear, and answer my plea, dear. I love only you. Why won't you be true? See, dear, have pity on me, and answer my plea, dear. I love only you, only you.
Jerome and his men of music say that perhaps the day is near at hand to wrap your troubles in dreams. Well, we won't blame anyone for that. Particularly don't blame me. Now here's Dottie Murphy, solo tight. She follows up with a question and answer.
Question and answer by two lovers heard, letting the whole world go by. Scarcely a whisper and hardly a word, maybe no more than a sigh. Question and answer, both old as the sea, yet two fond hearts ever knew. For the sweetest of questions is, do you love me? And the sweetest of answers, I do. Question and answer in one kiss divine. Two loving hearts standing still, while the sweet silent question is, will be mine? And the sweet silent answer,
You have faith in radio, don't you? Sure you do. You knew we'd get around to it, didn't you? Now's the time to wrap your troubles in dreams. Listening to the Music Room with Jerry Jerome and his Men of Music, songs by the Murphy Sisters. A presentation of the National Broadcasting Company. "12:55 p.m. Eastern Wartime. This is WEAF, New York. The following is transcribed.
Now at last, folks, here's an easy, pleasant, better way to preserve personal daintiness and true cleanliness. Just use Cuticura soap and Cuticura talcum for your bath every day.
Cuticura? What's Cuticura?
Cuticura soap and Cuticura talcum are fragrant, mildly medicated preparations specially made to give you the finest possible skin care. Luxurious Cuticura soap quickly banishes grime and surface impurities.
And Lady, Cuticura talcum is like no other talcum you've ever used. This borated talc is finer, smoother, better. It deodorizes, too, absorbs moisture amazingly, keeps you feeling fresh and secure long after your bath.
So, friends, why take chances?
Bathe with fragrant, mildly medicated Cuticura soap every day, then dust on wonderfully refreshing Cuticura talcum. Buy Cuticura at your druggist.
Remember,
Cuticura.
buy Cuticura.
This Cuticura I hear about. Yes, what is this Cuticura care?
Ladies, it's simply this. The regular use of mildly medicated Cuticura soap and Cuticura ointment. Try it this very day if you have externally caused rashes, skin blemishes, or skin irritations. See if you, like thousands upon thousands, get prompt, almost immediate relief. Here's why.
Cuticura contains medical ingredients that help heal, protect, and beautify, all at the same time.
Yes, that's why Cuticura is the right way to promptly help relieve externally caused rash, skin blemishes, and skin irritations. Remember, claims for unmedicated soaps and face creams cannot possibly compare in results with scientifically medicated products.
So, ladies, do away with costly skin care. Instead, try economical, mildly medicated Cuticura soap and Cuticura ointment to help externally blemished complexions regain new natural loveliness. Buy today.
This is the National Broadcasting Company.
Beginning Monday, August 13th, Don Lurch will be on hand as Farm Director of the Modern Farmer Program. We know you'll enjoy his friendly visits each morning, Monday through Saturday, and also the regular visits of farmers and agricultural leaders who will be his guests. So be with us and meet Don Lurch on August 13th from 6 to 7 in the mornings over this station, WEAF, NBC in New York.
From 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., Mary Margaret McBride's show would be up next, but we'll hear that in another podcast. So you've heard from 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. on Friday, August 10th, 1945. And the question that everybody's wanting to know, and they're not leaving their radios, is Japan going to surrender? We'll let you know. Keep it right here because we'll have another podcast going up until 3 p.m. And then we'll go to 5 p.m. So keep it right here because a lot of these shows you've never heard.